Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive from Ben's Book Summaries.
It's great to be here.
This time, we are going to be talking about The Emperor of All Maladies, a biography of cancer
Oh, yeah.
by Siddhartha Mukherjee. And
Okay. Her book?
it is a big one.
It is a big one.
I will say that right up front.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Siddhartha Mukherjee
Yes.
is a physician, scientist, and Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yes, he is.
So this is a well-researched book. It's well-written.
Very well written.
And we're excited to dive into it.
I am too.
So right away, the book kind of throws us into this really personal story with Carla,
Yeah.
who is a school teacher,
Mm.
and she is facing a leukemia diagnosis.
Right.
And I think just that first chapter really kind of sets the tone for the rest of the book,
It does.
because it's not just about, the science of cancer, it's also about the human experience.
Absolutely. And the terror of that moment of diagnosis is palpable in that chapter.
Yeah, you can really feel
Like you're right there with her.
that feel.
Yes. That frantic kind of race against time that begins as soon as you hear those words.
Exactly. And Mukherjee uses Carla's story to really kind of illustrate what leukemia is.
Yeah.
Which is cancer of the white blood cells.
Which is essentially cancer in a liquid form coursing through the body.
That's a chilling way to put it.
It is.
But the book doesn't just focus on leukemia.
No.
Right.
This book takes a panoramic view of cancer throughout history. I mean, we're talking from ancient Egypt
Wow.
to the Greeks, all the way to modern research labs.
So it's like he's charting the evolution of this disease alongside humanity itself.
Exactly. He even includes personal anecdotes from his own experiences as an oncologist.
So like a biography, but of a disease.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
That's such a unique approach.
It is very unique, and I think that's one of the things that makes this book so compelling.
Yeah, so let's travel back in time a little bit here.
Okay.
How did people even think about cancer, centuries ago, before microscopes, before all this modern medicine that we have?
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about, right?
Yeah.
Well, the ancient Greeks, specifically Hippocrates, coined the term carcinoma.
Carcinoma.
And you know where that comes from?
I go.
The Greek word for crab.
Ah.
And it was because of the appearance of tumors and the swollen blood vessels around them.
So they saw that and they were like, oh, that looks like a crab.
Yeah, like a crab's legs or like a crab's shell. It's a little unsettling.
Yeah, and I'm guessing their treatments were not exactly
No.
what we would consider effective today.
No, not really. They used all sorts of bizarre concoctions, lead tinctures.
The lead tincture.
Crushed crab eyes, even.
Crab eyes.
Yeah, all based on this belief that cancer was caused by an imbalance of humors.
Humors.
Humors, yes.
No, I'm not sure I'm familiar with this concept of humors.
Okay, so the Greeks believed that the body had 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile.
Okay.
And each one was associated with certain temperaments and physical traits.
Okay.
They thought diseases arose from an imbalance of these humor. So, for example, they thought too much black bile caused melancholy.
And possibly cancer.
And possibly cancer, exactly. So they might try to purge the body of excess black bile.
So like if you were feeling down, they'd be like, all right, we need to get rid of some of this black bile.
Yeah, they would prescribe things like bloodletting or laxatives.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating how their understanding of the human body really shaped how they try to treat diseases.
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely different way of thinking about medicine than we have today.
So when did surgery start to come into the picture?
Well, surgery starts to emerge as a treatment a few centuries later.
Okay.
But you have to imagine these were brutal procedures, often without anesthesia.
I can't even imagine.
The book describes an 18th century mastectomy as almost ritualistic in its violence.
Wow.
A far cry from the precision of modern surgery.
Yeah, and reading about these early procedures, it just makes you realize how much courage those patients must have had
Absolutely.
to go through something like that.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, if there was ever a point where surgery became too aggressive,
Oh, absolutely.
like swinging too far in the other direction.
Yes, and the Emperor of All Maladies really digs into that with the rise of the radical mastectomy,
Okay.
which was championed by a surgeon named William Halsted.
William Halsted.
Yeah, for decades, this was the standard treatment for breast cancer.
Really?
It involved removing not just the breast,
No.
but also chest muscles and lymph nodes.
So it was very disfiguring.
It was incredibly disfiguring and often without any real improvement in survival rates.
That's so sad.
It's a really sobering reminder that even with good intentions, medical advancements can sometimes have unintended consequences.
It really makes you appreciate how crucial it is to constantly reevaluate and refine treatments as we learn more about the disease.
Absolutely. We can't just assume that something that worked in the past is still the best option.
Right. And speaking of reevaluation, the book does such a good job of illustrating how scientific thought about cancer has evolved.
Oh, for sure.
Like, we were talking about the humors earlier.
Yes.
Those ideas eventually gave way to more evidence-based approaches.
Thankfully.
Yes. So where does chemotherapy fit into all of this?
Well, that's where we see a huge shift.
Okay.
One of the key figures in the development of chemotherapy is Sidney Farber,
Sidney Farber.
a pathologist who was just totally dedicated to finding a cure for childhood leukemia.
That's incredible.
And his work with these things called antifolates, like aminopride.
It's
Yeah, in the 1940s, that was a pivotal moment. It really marked the beginning of the chemotherapy era.
And didn't he also spearhead a pretty remarkable fundraising campaign?
He did.
Do you remember what it was called?
It was called the Jimmy Fund,
The Jimmy Fund.
named after one of his young leukemia patients.
Oh, wow.
It involved everyone from baseball stars to Hollywood celebrities, raising awareness and much-needed research funds.
I love that.
It's a really heartwarming story.
And speaking of awareness, this is also around the time of the war on cancer, right?
You're right.
In the U.S.
Yep. The 1971 National Cancer Act, fueled by advocates like Mary Lasker, poured billions of dollars into cancer research.
Wow.
It was a huge deal. It felt like a national call to arms, like a moonshot for cancer.
It must have been an incredibly exciting time for researchers and patients alike.
There was this real sense of hope that we were finally going to conquer cancer.
But the book doesn't shy away from the complexities of this period, does it?
Not at all. Mukherjee explores the controversies and debates that surrounded the war on cancer.
Like what?
Well, there were questions about research priorities, concerns about the harsh side effects of chemotherapy,
Right.
and this dawning realization that cancer wasn't a single enemy, but rather a multitude of diseases, each with its own unique challenges.
So it wasn't going to be as easy as they initially thought.
Not at all. It turned out to be a much more complex problem than they anticipated. It was a real humbling realization for the scientific community. Cancer wasn't going to surrender easily.
So what happened next? How did researchers adapt to this, new understanding that cancer is so complex?
Well, they had to kind of shift gears. Instead of looking for a single cure-all, they started focusing on understanding the specific characteristics of different types of cancer.
Okay.
It's kind of like you wouldn't use the same strategy to fight a guerrilla war as you would a conventional battle.
I see what you mean. So how did this new approach translate into actual treatments?
That's where we start to see the rise of targeted therapies.
Okay.
Mukherjee describes it as hitting cancer cells with a laser-guided missile,
Oh,
instead of a bomb that harms both healthy and cancerous cells.
that's a great analogy.
Right?
So it's much more precise.
Much more precise, exactly.
And I remember the book mentioned some specific examples of targeted therapies.
Oh, definitely. He talks about Herceptin for HER2 positive breast cancer
Okay.
and Gleevec for chronic myeloid leukemia, or CML.
those were considered breakthroughs, right?
Absolutely. They dramatically improved survival rates for patients with these types of cancer.
Can you explain a little more about how these targeted therapies actually work?
Sure. So imagine each cancer cell has a unique set of locks.
Blocks.
And targeted therapies are like keys designed to fit those specific locks.
Okay.
So, for example, Herceptin targets the HER2 protein, which is overexpressed in some breast cancers.
Okay.
By binding to this protein, Herceptin basically shuts down the signals that tell the cancer cells to grow and divide.
So it's like cutting off the fuel supply to a fire.
Exactly. It's disrupting the mechanisms that drive the cancer's growth.
And what about Gleevec? How does that one work?
Gleevec works in a similar way. It targets a specific enzyme called BCR-ABL, which is found in CML cells.
BCR-ABL.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. But basically, this enzyme drives the uncontrolled growth of these cells.
Okay.
So by inhibiting this enzyme, Gleevec essentially puts the brakes on cancer cell proliferation.
So again, it's like stopping that fuel supply.
Exactly. It's all about interfering with the specific pathways that are driving the cancer's growth.
These targeted therapies sound like a huge leap forward.
They really are, but the book also hints at this fascinating concept of mapping the cancer genome.
The cancer genome. What is that?
It's essentially like creating a genetic blueprint of an individual's cancer.
Oh, wow.
By sequencing the DNA of cancer cells, researchers can pinpoint the specific mutations that are driving its growth.
So it's like personalized medicine tailored to the unique genetic makeup of each patient's tumor.
Exactly. And by understanding the genetic landscape of a tumor, doctors can select therapies that are most likely to be effective for that particular patient.
That's incredible.
It also opens up possibilities for developing entirely new drugs that target those specific mutations.
It makes you realize how complex cancer really is.
Oh, absolutely. Each case is like a unique puzzle.
And that's why Mukherjee emphasizes the importance of ongoing research.
Absolutely. We're still learning so much about this disease.
He also dives into this really interesting field of immunotherapy.
Yes. Immunotherapy is incredibly promising.
Can you refresh my memory on how immunotherapy works? Sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, our immune system is designed to recognize and attack foreign invaders like bacteria and viruses, right? But cancer cells often evade detection by the immune system. They're kind of like chameleons blending into the background.
So how do we help the immune system see these cancer cells for what they are?
There are a couple of different approaches. One involves using drugs called checkpoint inhibitors.
Checkpoint inhibitors.
Yeah, they work by taking the brakes off the immune system, allowing it to recognize and attack cancer cells more aggressively.
So it's like giving our immune system a supercharge.
Exactly. We're boosting its ability to fight the cancer.
And I think there was another approach too, right?
Yes, another approach involves using genetically engineered immune cells known as HERRT cells.
CT cells.
Yeah, you can think of these cells like microscopic assassins that are programmed to hunt and destroy specific cancer cells.
That sounds like science fiction.
I know it does, but here our T-cell therapy is already being used in clinical trials with some really promising results.
That's amazing.
It is, and Mukherjee makes the point that this research is just the tip of the iceberg.
As our understanding of the immune system in cancer biology continues to evolve,
The potential for even more effective immunotherapies is huge.
it's truly mind-boggling to consider all the advancements happening in cancer research.
I know it's an incredibly exciting time to be following this field,
Hmm.
and it really makes you realize, how much we've learned about cancer in such a short amount of time.
It's incredible. And speaking of, learning and new things,
Yeah.
the book also touches on the development of vaccines
Oh, yes.
for certain types of cancer,
Yes.
which blew my mind when I was reading about it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The HPV vaccine, for example, can protect against cervical cancer.
So it's like a whole new frontier in the fight against cancer, moving beyond treatment to actually preventing the disease before it even starts.
It is, and it shows that we're not just playing defense anymore.
No.
We're actually going on the offense.
That's a great way to put it.
And it underscores the importance of continued investment in research and the development of these new prevention strategies.
Who knows what other cancer-preventing vaccines might be possible in the future.
Exactly. The possibilities are really exciting.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Emperor of All Maladies,
Yeah.
I'm struck by the fact that this book doesn't just offer a scientific account of cancer,
Right.
but also a deeply human one.
Yes.
It's like,
It's so well written.
it is.
I think that's one of the things that makes it so powerful.
It reminds us that behind every diagnosis, every treatment, every research study,
Yeah.
there are real people
There are.
whose lives are profoundly affected by this disease.
Absolutely. And Mukherjee really captures that in his writing.
He does, and one of the quotes from the book that really stuck with me was this.
Which one?
He said, "Cancer is a disease we can fight, and that fight is worth fighting."
That's a good one.
And for anyone listening who's been touched by cancer, either personally or through someone they love, I think that's such a powerful message of hope and resilience.
It's a reminder that we're not powerless in this fight.
Exactly. So as we close out this deep dive from Ben's book summaries, we hope you'll consider picking up The Emperor of All Maladies and exploring this fascinating and deeply human story for yourself.
Definitely, it's a book that everyone should read.
It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish reading it.
It will.
And be sure to check out other deep dives from Ben's book summaries.